So, like, to what extent, right, should we give people respect just because they've been around the world a few more times? You know what I mean? And it's like, you can think of a few examples. You could think of, like, okay, my grandpa, my CEO, and this crackhead on the street, they're all between, 60, 50, and we'll say like 55 and 70. You know what I mean? It's like, do they all garner the same level of respect? And that's going to trigger the fuck out of some people. Why wouldn't you respect somebody just because they're homeless? Blah, 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 blah. Again, we're not talking about respect on like a human level, okay? I think what we're talking about is respect as an authority figure. You know what I mean? And while I would give all three of those people the same amount of just human respect, right? Like, I'm not going to fucking, if you're sleeping on the sidewalk, I'm not going to fucking spit on you and kick you. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to sit there and talk down, oh, you're a lazy piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like, no, I'm just going to move on about my day. Okay? But at the same time, like, if you're sitting there trying to give me advice, and it's like, I can clearly see your crack pipe, and you're trying to convince me of, like, everything going wrong in the world, and, like, how I should be working and doing better. It's like, well, you know what I mean? Just food for thought. I think it's super interesting. I would love to have a conversation about this to somebody, but I do think it's a really weird one that I grapple with, and I would never, just to be clear, I would never just fall back on that with my kid. I would never just be like, you need to respect your elders. It's like, no. Here's why we should give this person more authoritative respect, okay? Because they actually help you out. They do stuff. They're part of your life and stuff like that. And overall, they are trying to help you. Okay, this other random person at Walmart acting like a crazy person, it's like, oh, well, we give them a different level of respect. You know what I mean? We're not just going to listen when they tell us to do something. Okay, but, at the same time, we're not allowed to throw rocks at people anymore, so. Casual Exchanges podcast, where most of the time we are going to try to walk through thinking about novel, everyday, normie problems. But this is going to be a lot like those super rare coffee beans that they pull out of, like, elephant shit. Okay, well, sometimes you get those rare coffee beans. Other times it's just a pile of elephant shit. Welcome in. Anyways, let's get to something people actually want to think about here. What is a super harmless opinion that somehow always starts an argument? I actually find this interesting on a couple of different levels. And just as a preface, I have been trying to reframe my thinking on conversations to save myself from wasting time, frankly, because I find that a lot of times I'm coming at a conversation from a different point or place than somebody else is, okay? And not just from like, what I mean is that, like, we engage in conversation for like a couple of different reasons, right? Maybe it's just basic like socialization, like you and your buddies shooting the shit, just catching up, dick jokes, you know what I mean? Like shit like that. Like there really is no purpose to it other than socializing and togetherness, okay? As far as I can tell, and I'm open to kind of reframing my thoughts on this, but socialization, then there's obviously the exchange of information, the exchange of experience, and then the exchange of emotion, which is a really interesting one. And so what I mean by I end up coming at this from a different place is that I'm normally coming at a conversation, especially if it's not like I only really socialize with like, kind of group of friends. I don't do that with just like random fucking people. But I'm normally going into a conversation looking to exchange information or experience. You know what I mean? Trying to build up some sort of like framework around the idea. Okay, and this goes for a lot of different topics. And it gets super controversial depending on the topics, okay? Because people feel a certain type of way when you start talking about economics, about, the state of politics, okay? About different social issues. All of a sudden, I'm coming at it from a exchange information, ideas, and experiences standpoint. They're coming at it from a emotion standpoint, exchanging emotion. Okay, their objective in the conversation is not to convince me, okay, or actually I should say there's a hierarchy, right? It starts at trying to convince me that like I'm wrong, okay, and that generally when people are falling into this line of thinking, it's not only that you're wrong, it's that you're a bad person for being wrong, okay, which in my opinion is probably very silly, okay? So then it shifts from, then they realize they can't convince you, okay, over to their side. So then they're just trying to make you feel bad about it. They're just trying to gaslight you, essentially. And convince you that, like, oh, okay, not only are you wrong, but because you're doubling down and you won't admit that I'm right, you're actually a bad person, okay? And worse than that, you're a bad, stupid person. Or else, because if you were a good and smart person, you would agree with me. Okay, and normally these lines of thinking are super silly. There's not a whole lot of substance to them, and they're not going to actually substantiate like any claims. But it's super difficult because, again, from me, I'm not trying to assume that of other people. Okay, I'm trying to assume like, oh, okay, we're trying to exchange ideas, information, and experiences, and we're trying to come take our perspectives and bring them kind of closer together to see like, oh, okay, what are the downsides or trade-offs of like each perspective? What are some potential blind spots, right? And how can we make these perspectives actually better and actually elevate the way both of us think about this particular topic? Okay, and that's not how a lot of people approach that. Okay, and I feel the need to preface this thread with that because I think there are going to be a lot of different examples, but I think a lot of them are going to boil down to people freak out over things, over you having an idea or making a statement or something that in some cases could be benign because they're coming at it from a place of emotion, which in my opinion is the wrong way to go about it. It's a very good way to make sure that you are detached from reality, okay, and you're living in your own little bubble and echo chamber, okay, and just trying to reinforce the things that you believe, okay. But if you're trying to actually understand the world and human behavior, okay, and you're actually trying to move things forward, okay, like what you need to do is like look at the landscape, look at the available information and data, look at the underlying incentive structures, okay, and you need to work based off of that. It's going to be a very uphill battle to just convince everybody that you are somehow right about everything that you're talking about. Okay, really weird. I've never known anybody to be right about everything. Okay, but somehow you're right about everything. Not only are you right about everything, okay, but you are also the paragon of virtue. Okay, you're the ultimate good person that knows everything. And so obviously anybody who disagrees with you is therefore bad and stupid. Again, really weird way to go about it. In my opinion, the people going about conversations like that, in general, tend to be on the lower scale of intellectual prowess and capability. But again, what the fuck do I know? I'm not trying to convince you of this. I'm putting my ideas out there, and you can tell me what you agree and disagree with, just to be clear. Now, let's actually, after all that fucking ranting that I do like at the beginning of every video, let's get into like the real shit, okay? Reddit's gonna teach me some shit, because I don't know fuck about all, okay? Super harmless opinion that somebody somehow always starts an argument. So after I went through my whole preface one, the easiest ones are like politics. If you disagree with anybody on politics, it doesn't matter. If I disagree with people on one side who are more conservative, like MAGA crowd, then I'm a fucking psycho blue-haired leftist. If I disagree with the more liberal side, then I'm a Nazi apparently. Okay, so like it just doesn't matter. I have some of the most modest views on politics, the most moderate views on politics, and somehow like everybody hates me for it. It's super weird. I can't win on either side. Anyways, another one is economics. It's super weird, but yeah, if you disagree with people on economics, like if you're more of like a free market person, then you just like hate all poor people. And if you are for certain like social safety nets and stuff like that, then you just hate rich people, which is super weird. And I just want to acknowledge like there are very silly views on economics that just boil down to that. Some people just like to shit on rich people, and it's super funny and like unproductive. Okay, it's just like saying that like if you have any wealth about you that you're a bad fucking person and you've exclusively done it off slave labor, which probably is not the case. But of course nobody agrees with that. And then there are other people where it's just like, oh well, all poor people are just making bad choices and need to work harder. And it's like both those things are probably untrue. You know what I mean? So it's like where do we have a more productive conversation around that? But let's see what Reddit has to say. The state. Okay, so what was this? Super harmless opinion that somehow always starts an argument. The state should provide people with basic level of health care so that not dying in the street isn't linked to how much money you have. Not controversial here in the UK, but in the US, you'd think you'd ask some people to murder their own kids. This is really weird. Also, the UK, no offense, kind of a shithole. I can't. Like, do people in the UK even want to live in the UK? Also, it's like basic level of healthcare so that people are not dying in the street. Like, most of the, like, okay, we have to be able to talk about the fact that, like, the people dying in the street, no offense, but a lot of them are because of, like, chronic drug use. Okay, a much smaller fucking speck is because of other things like availability of food and even healthcare. I'm not entirely certain. Maybe this is maybe I misunderstand, but again, I don't think you can turn somebody away that's like in a medical emergency, like an actual medical emergency, just because they don't have health care. Now, when it comes to like preventative stuff or symptomatic stuff, like that might be different. But medical emergencies, it's like, yeah, I don't think so. But yeah, this is super funny that he mentions like being from the UK. It's like UK and Canada. I mean, I know people love the social services aspect of it, but they haven't had like any sort of economic growth in like a fucking decade or something. So it's like, I would never want to live in the UK, but I mean, I hope you like it. Being child free fucking rules. Yeah, maybe. The so I don't know why I'm kind of agnostic to this. I feel like that's totally fine, and I don't feel like I would ever chastise anybody. Like I don't care if you don't have kids, if you don't want to have kids, if like whatever X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? Like to the extent that you're not trying to push that view on like other people, or to the extent that you're not trying to like even if you're trying to rub it in my face, though, it's like, ooh, I don't have kids, I have all this freedom. It's like, yeah, cool. It's like, but also like, I don't really care about going to concerts and smoking weed and like getting drunk every weekend. So it's like, what are you doing that like I'm not doing? Like there are some things. I mean, like my buddies get to spend way more money on random cool bro shit than like I do, but also overall I'm just more financially responsible than them. I could spend more money than I do on random bro shit. You know what I mean? I just choose not to because I'm I try to be a little bit more detail oriented when it comes to my finances. So even then, but it's like I feel like this normally ties into, I guess there are two aspects. There's one where it's like people who are really enjoying their relationship and really enjoying the freedom of adulthood, like with a partner and stuff like that, and then people who are just like single, young, wild, and free, like spending a lot of time like doing what I would consider to be, just kind of young people shit, like the nightlife type shit, where it's like you spend your time like going clubbing with friends and maybe traveling and going to fucking Coachella and Burning Man and shit like that. It's like that's cool. That's not really me. Would it be cool to just have more free time with my partner to go out and do things? Yeah, we did a little bit of that before we had our daughter, though. You know what I mean? We spent a year or two before lockdown where we were just kind of go. We were just spending money on kind of traveling and doing that kind of shit. So it's like I don't feel like we missed out entirely. But again, like if that's the way, if you like to enjoy that, totally cool. Star Wars. I'm sure people do get super salty about Star Wars. Like, has there, and just on a to start some real shit, have there been any Star Wars games that like the fan base actually likes? I'm curious because I feel like everybody always complains about them. Ooh, interesting. I don't give a flying fuck if you're older than me. You can't expect me, or you can't expect respect from me if you're disrespectful yourself. This is super interesting, and I really like this one. This is something that I've wrestled a lot with in my time. Growing up, this was a really big thing. This was like part of the ethos of like my family, right? Is the whole like respect your elders thing. And it didn't matter. There were no circumstances in which we deviated from like a couple of rules. It always kind of came back to a couple of these like cornerstone kind of notions, in my opinion, not even beliefs. Um, and this is one of them, right? The respect your elders thing. And I struggle a lot with it because, on the one hand, okay, like, do I want my child going around, disrespecting adults and telling them to fuck off and calling them fucking loudmouth cockholes, even if they are? You know what I mean? Probably not. Okay. Why is that? Okay, well, as a child, you're in a position of vulnerability because you cannot take care of yourself. Okay, for for a long period. I mean, my daughter's very young, so she has many years to go before she reaches that self-sufficiency point. Okay, so she needs to, on some level, have people and adults that she can rely on for help. Okay, and the fact is, like, just if your kid is a bit of a shit, less people are going to want to engage and be around them and help them. You know what I mean? So that's a portion of it. And there becomes a point where that's no longer true, right? Once a child is a little bit more on the self-sufficient side. Okay, and so it's like, so to what point, what I struggle with is like, to what point is it true that you should just carte blanche respect people because they are your elders? Because like me, I'm only 30 years old, right? I mean, I know to some of you whippersnappers, right? I would be considered the village elder, and you guys would be gathering around to celebrate my life because there's no guarantee that I make it through the winter, okay? I recognize that. But in today's day and age, right, there are plenty of people way fucking older than me. Okay, so even like in my family and stuff like that, but even that I work with professionally, okay? So like, to what extent, right, should we give people respect just because they've been around the world a few more times? You know what I mean? And it's like, you can think of a few examples. You could think of like, okay, my grandpa, my CEO, and this crackhead on the street, they're all between, 60, 50, we'll say like 55 and 70. You know what I mean? It's like, do they all garner the same level of respect? And that's going to trigger the fuck out of some people. Why wouldn't you respect somebody just because they're homeless? Blah, 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 blah. Again, we're not talking about respect on like a human level, okay? I think what we're talking about is respect as an authority figure. You know what I mean? And while I would give all three of those people the same amount of just human respect, right? Like, I'm not going to fucking, if you're sleeping on the sidewalk, I'm not going to fucking spit on you and kick you. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to sit there and talk down, oh, you're a lazy piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like, no, I'm just going to move on about my day. Okay? But at the same time, like, if you're sitting there trying to give me advice, and it's like, I can clearly see your crack pipe, and you're trying to convince me of like everything going wrong in the world and like how I should be working and doing better. It's like, well, you know what I mean? So just to reiterate, I'm giving them all three the same level of just human respect, but I'm not going to give them the same amount of, authoritative respect. Absolutely not. Why the fuck would I? You know what I mean? Just food for thought. I think it's super interesting. I would love to have a conversation about this to somebody, but I do think it's a really weird one that I grapple with, and I would never, just to be clear, I would never just fall back on that with my kid. I would never just be like, you need to respect your elders. It's like, no. Here's why we should give this person more authoritative respect, okay? Because they actually help you out. They do stuff. They're part of your life and stuff like that. And overall, they are trying to help you. Okay, this other random person at Walmart acting like a crazy person, it's like, oh, well, we give them a different level of respect. You know what I mean? We're not just going to listen when they tell us to do something. Okay, but, at the same time, we're not allowed to throw rocks at people anymore, so. Sugar is far more dangerous to life than almost anything out there. Oh, wow. I'm so glad. This feels like such a good palate cleanser after like that past 5 minutes of me ranting and talking about like a potentially complex kind of notion that's been ingrained into kind of our society for a while, and kind of where it fits and where it doesn't. And then we're going to come to this fucking Neanderthal, okay, who's never had a decent fucking thought in his life. I'm so glad. And I just love the dichotomy of Reddit. You know what I mean? The most dangerous thing in life. Really? Like, so let's see. If I'm walking down the street with my child, okay, and on one side of the street, okay, there are a bunch of candy bars, okay, and the other side, a bunch of needles loaded with fentanyl, okay, like, which side of the street should we go on? Just out of curiosity. I don't know. That people are allowed to have their own opinions, even unpopular ones. The forced compliance crowd hates this concept. This is this is really interesting, and this is another thing. Nobody we all want to think that we have some super easy fix, okay? And that super easy fix is either like media censorship or social media censorship or like, banning people or posts or something like that, or even socially just trying to ostracize people and labeling like, oh, you think this, you must be a bad idiot, right? And I think this is just so much more complex than people give it credit for. Like, on some level, do we want to let every idea into our thought ecosystem, like from a society standpoint? Like, I live here in the States, right? Do I want every idea allowed in the thought ecosystem? Man, that's really tough because there are some dumb fucking people out there, okay? But at the same time, from like a cornerstone of the states, right? If you don't know, is the aspect of freedom of speech. Okay, that's something that's really cool and unique about the states, and people are gonna fucking lose their minds. Okay, what that means is the government cannot come after you for opinions that you express. Okay, yeah, private businesses, it becomes a whole nother conversation, and then socially, it's even more like an even more tricky conversation, because it's like at the end of the day, like your friend group, my friend group can ostracize me like for whatever. They don't need to fucking hang out with me. They don't need to like me. They don't need to socialize with me or really engage. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, a lot of social interactions and engagements and relationships, they are at will. They're just at will. You know what I mean? So it's really tough. And I think this is something, unfortunately, I think it's something we need to put a lot more brain power behind, because it is increasingly kind of a thing that's on the forefront of everybody's mind. But I don't like either approach. I don't like the approach of like, well, anybody should be able to say whatever the fuck they want. It's like, man, really? I feel like maybe if that's the case, then I feel like it comes down to, because maybe it shouldn't be the case that government can't come after you, right? Maybe it should be the case that government can't come after you for things, and private businesses also can't really come after you for things. But maybe from like a social perspective, we should try to be a little bit more responsible and hold each other accountable. You know what I mean? From that perspective, I don't know. I really think it's a super complex thing. But I also, just to close the loop on it, I also don't like the idea of just like, oh, I disagree with you, fucking ban. I disagree with you, you're a piece of shit. I disagree with you, you're fucking racist. You know what I mean? That seems very childish and immature and just low level thinking, in my opinion. So all that to say that this is really complex. And really, I think there's going to be a burden that millennials ultimately need to try to figure out, and really put some brain amperage behind to come up with, something better moving forward. Because obviously we're experiencing a lot of growing pains right now. And that's all, folks. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. If you didn't like the video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. That way you can talk shit on my next video too, all right?